Hi, I'm Andrew Simpson with Ether Automation, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to save files from Zoho Sign into Zoho Workdrive. Now, if you've watched my previous video, I showed you how to create folders and attach those folders to a deal record in Zoho CRM so that you can have a folder structure within Workdrive that matches what you have in CRM. And in this video, we're going to download something from Zoho Sign, assuming that a deal is just closed, and we're going to save that file into that Workdrive folder in the deal record. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and hopefully I'm sharing the right screen. Otherwise, this will be a short video. Okay, so I'm in a deal record right now. And again, if you watch my last video, I have this attachment, which is actually a folder to Workdrive. So what we're going to imagine here is that I've just sent out something for signature and someone has signed it, right? So now we have a signed contract in Zoho Sign. And what we're going to want to do is set up a function to save this file in this folder. Now I've conveniently added in the ID of the deal record to the name. In another video, I'll show you different ways we can structure names of these files. But for the example in this video, I just have the ID here. So this is the ID right here. So let's start out by making a function, right? This is going to be a standalone function because you're going to want to create a webhook from Zoho Sign. And again, I'll show that in another video. Let's create a function. Let's go new function, save signed contract to deal. And this is going to be a standalone function. Great. So let's start out with some architecture here. What's the first thing we want to do? We actually want to go get signed doc details. Now, we want to get the details of the signed document before we download the PDF, right? And then we want to get the related deal. Then we want to get the related Workdrive folder and the folder ID. Then we want to download the Zoho Sign doc PDF. And we want to upload the Zoho Sign doc to Workdrive folder. This is a very simple function. So let's start this one out. First, we want to do is we want to get the signed doc details. Now, another tab, I actually have the Zoho Sign API, and we want to get details of a particular document, right? And if you look here, this is the API request we want to do. And the reason we want this is if I download the PDF first, there's no information that comes with it. I don't know what deal it's related to. But if I get the details first, I can look at the request name or the request name to understand what deal it's related to. Again, if you put the name of the deal in the name or the ID like I have, you'd use that to search for a deal. So let's start out. Let's copy this one here. And let's go to Zoho CRM. Let's bring in a webhook. And we're going to call this one sign details. Put the URL in here. The type is get. And we're going to get rid of the parameters and headers. Now, if you look at the Zoho Sign API, it doesn't tell you what scopes you need, but we know there needs to be a connection. If you don't know what a connection is, you're going to have to watch some of the previous videos. But if I go to Document Manager, you'll know you need to have Zoho Sign create, read, and update. And I already have that ready. So Zoho Sign documents all will work fine. So we're going to use the connection name of Workdrive files, same as my last video, connection, right there. And before we go any further, we want to do a parameter. We want to create a parameter. So sign doc ID is an integer. Great. So info sign details. So now we know if I grab the request ID up here, save an egg. Oh, I forgot to do this. Plus sign doc ID. So now if I run this, you'll see that it pulls in the sign details, all this stuff right here. So the next thing we want to do is get the related deal. Now I have this information right here, and in the request, I can look at what we planned, which was going to be the get details. We want to look at the request name. So you look closely, request name is the deal ID, and the request name is actually inside the requests right here. So let's go deal ID equals these sign details right here. Dot get requests from right here. And then dot get, and then within the requests, again, we had planned it is the request name. So let's put that right in here. And then finally, we know in this case it's a number, so we'll put 2 long. Again, if you have named your signed document differently than I have, you may have to do a search record here or some other style of finding the related deal. But in my case, I can go deal equals zoho.crm.getRecord by ID, deals, and then the deal ID is the one I want to use. So now that I have my deal, I want to get the related Workdrive folder and that folder ID. Now, that's found in the attachments, and if I open this up, the folder ID I want to use is right here at the end. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll go attachments to deal equals zoho.crm.get related records. And the relation we're looking for is attachments. And the type or the parent module name is deals. And finally, the number is the deal ID. So this is going to return a list of attachments. Now, in our case, we have one attachments to the deal, but you may have more than that. So we're going to do this as a for loop. For each potential folder. Now, if you remember my previous video, or if you've seen my previous video, this should be seem very familiar. We're going to iterate through all the potential folders, and if one of those potential folders has the file name that is the same as the deal name, get the deal, then this is the one we're going to want to use. So let's get the folder ID. Go folder ID list equals the potential folder dot get. Again, very similar to my last video, we're going to get the link underscore URL, and we're going to turn this into a list by going to list So now we have a list of this URL, and we want to get the last thing in the list. So let's go folder ID equals folder ID list dot get folder ID list dot size. So this would say, hey, we want to get the last thing in the list. Now, because computers count starting at 0, we actually want to -1. So this will get us the last thing in the list. And finally, we want to do a break command in case you have a lot of attachments on the deal. So now down here, we have the folder ID. Next thing we want to do is we want to download that file from Zoho Sign. So how are we doing that? Let's make a webhook again. We're going to call this a PDF attachment. And the URL we want to use, we can find that by looking at the API again. So let's go to Zoho Sign API documentation. We'll see that there's a download PDF. It's a GET request. So let's go ahead and copy this URL. The URL is right here. And let's put in the request ID. And we know the request ID because it is the doc ID we're using. The type is a GET request, and this information we don't need. We will need the connection. We're going to use the same connection we did above. And finally, if you've seen my previous video on downloading files via webhooks, you'll remember I talked about the response format parameter. So we want to use that here, response-format file. Now, this doesn't need to be in quotes. Sometimes the documentation says it should be, but it actually works better if you don't. So then this is a info PDF attachment. And then finally, now that we have the PDF attachment right here, we want to upload this to the Workdrive folder. So how are we going to do that? If we look at the Workdrive API, there is on the left-hand side, files folder, and we want to upload a file. So it is a post request with this URL, and then here is the information we want to use. So a file name, a parent ID, which is the folder ID, and then the content. So let's go ahead and copy this URL. And let's bring in a webhook. Upload file. The URL is this right here. The type is post. I'm going to take out the headers and I'm going to explain why in a bit. Now we need the parameters. So let's make a map. Upload map equals map. Upload map dot puts, and there were 3 parameters we wanted to use: the file name, then it was the parent ID, parent underscore ID, and finally there was one called content. Great. So the file name, we're going to call this signed documents.pdf. The parent ID is this folder ID found up here. And finally, the content is this PDF attachment. So let's grab this upload file and let's put it in the parameters. Finally, we're going to need 2 more things. First one we're going to need is a connection, because all Zoho apps require authentication. And we're actually using the same one from here. If you look you'll need Zoho Workdrive files create, and we already have that Workdrive files all. So we have that here. And the second thing, and this is the important step, is you're going to need a special content type. When dealing with files, we almost always want to do the following content type, content-type. We want to use multi-part / form data. Info upload file. So we want to use multi-part form data for basically all files. And this will automatically convert this into a transmittable data. So let's go ahead and save and execute. At line 60, I have an error, and that error is a semicolon. So let's save and execute. Again, I have nothing in this file. And then here is the Zoho Sign document we're using. So I'm going to copy the request right here, and I'm going to put it in here. Save. And now when I go to here, here is the folder, the Workdrive folder that is attached to the deal. And the file is in there. And if I open it up, here's the file. I hope this was a helpful video. I'll see you in the next one.